Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast to the protection against heavy rain and flooding by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
So the big challenge is, how can house owners like you and me get a flood-free home? How can business managers like you and me get a flood-free company? And how can public servants provide flood-free critical infrastructure and livable cities?
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe. This podcast is for foresighted and proactive people who do not want to shovel the muddy water out of their room while standing in the midst of the disaster.
Therefore, those who design and plan, the architects and engineers, need to construct such buildings and cities, and that even when the entire environment is completely flooded. That is a challenge, and this podcast will give the answers.
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
Hello and welcome for another episode of Flood Protection Secrets. And 2 days ago I was talking about a crazy little thing, a tiny little thing that drove me crazy. Yes, indeed. And you know what happened? That is what might happen to everybody who is using these technical gadgets. When I'm recording my podcast, I use a Rode podcaster. It's a kind of electronic gadget with different inputs, so I can attach different microphones and can also connect it with my headphone and can add some special noises, some stingers, how the professional call it. And there is a small slot for a micro SD card, and this micro SD card was not working. So the consequence was I have recorded my podcast episode with my iPhone, so the quality of the voice of the audio channel was probably not as perfect as normal, but I could record it, however, without intro and without outro. And what I've said, perhaps some of you really appreciated it because they don't like this intro and this outro. I like it very much, but of course I don't like it all the time. Anyway, it depends. Anyway, and today I want to tell you, what the consequence was. The consequence was not really huge because there was an episode and I connected it with flood protection. And today I want to tell you how I solved the problem. That is one thing. Perhaps you are in a similar situation, but I will also tell you a little bit about Murphy's Law. You probably know Murphy's Law. So what can go wrong will go wrong. Yeah, I think everybody has made this experience in the daily life. When somebody can go wrong, it will go wrong, definitely. Today, I will tell you just what I did. So just for all the technical freaks I know it's a podcast about flood protection secrets, but just a very small comment. I bought, 2 days ago, I bought a new micro SD card. So I bought it with Amazon. So they delivered it the following day, just after lunchtime. And I inserted it and to the podcaster, Rode podcaster, and it works well. For all those who have problems with the micro SD cards with their phones, that can happen again. And our IT admin told me that he also he tried to reformat this tiny micro SD card, and it was not possible. You cannot overwrite, you cannot remove, you cannot do anything anymore. So you just can throw it away. And that's what I did. I replaced it, and luckily, of course, I took all the data from it already. So I back up everything. So that is what I can recommend to you. Always make a backup. But that's it already with the technical things, because we want to talk about flood protection secrets. And as I've mentioned, my solution was I recorded it without gadget, so without my typical electronic device, my podcaster recorder. But how is it with heavy rain? And there the consequences are more serious, aren't they? damages, losses, and injuries or death. When it comes to water, heavy rain, storm, flooding, very often it comes when a monsoon is coming, a typhoon, a hurricane, a cyclone, all these bad storm things. By the way, they are all the same. I often explained it, typhoon, hurricane, cyclone, all the same, depends where you live on this beautiful planet. Simply people call it in a different way. So in Southeast Asia, they always talk about typhoons. In the Caribbean Sea, at the US, at least the East Coast, they talk about hurricanes and cyclones. It's in Oman, for instance, in the Middle East. Everything starts with a trickle of water. And when you are at home, or even in another building, it doesn't matter whether we talk about at home, but imagine you are at home, you are in your house, and suddenly there's a little bit tiny water, below the door. You see that. So what will you do? You take a mop. So everybody has a kind of mop at home to remove some water traces. And that will help. But then there's more water coming underneath the door. And then you take another mop. Then you take a bigger one. Then you take a towel, another towel. But then it's enough. You cannot take more because there's too much water. And you can compare it with a domestic kitchen sponge. These yellow green or yellow pink sponges. Here in Germany, they have a green side, or this hard side that's green. Anyway, most of the time they are yellow. Once this domestic kitchen sponge is saturated with water, you cannot take more water anymore. That everybody knows that. So why should it be different with your mop or with your towel that you try to put at your door at home? So the water will simply go through it. You cannot protect this gap below the door. So the water will enter, and once you have a water column outside, that means up to the ankle, so up to the knee. So that's about half a meter or something, depending how tall you are. So up to the knee. Sooner or later, you will have the same water column inside your house. Because that is physics. Perhaps all of you who remember well the classes at school were physics. So then there's always a balance between outside and inside. So the water will be balanced. And from the higher to the lower ground. And sooner or later, you will have the same water column inside your house, inside your living room. So your sofa will be damaged. Your tables are swimming away and bumping against the office table. The computer will fall down. The electronic system shuts down. And luckily, you are not standing inside the water because to get in touch with the electricity is mortal. So that's not a good idea. You can only hope that the whole electric system has shut down already, that the grid has shut down from the authorities. But if not, you are really in danger. So don't step into this water that is mortal. Another example is when we talk about the garage. So take the increasing water to the garage, and you're sitting in your living room. So it's too far to help. It's too far to take care about your beautiful cars. And you spend so much money, your hard-earned money for these cars, and you are only hoping that nothing will happen to them, depending on the level of the garage. Perhaps it is at a lower level compared to your living room, because your house perhaps is elevated, but the garage is not. So you are hoping. And what about the basement parking? It's very risky to go downstairs, by the way, and to have a look to your car or to bring it out, because you will be trapped. And that happens all the time all over the world, that people try to get out with the car, and then they are trapped. They cannot get out anymore. And suddenly a huge waterfall is flowing inside the basement. I give you one example that was in Qatar, in Doha, in October 27, 2023. I was there 2 weeks later and visited the damages, and my friends and also the guards and the people who were responsible told me there was a heavy rain between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., so about 1 hour only, and that was enough to flood the whole basement parking. up to 4 meters. So the water column was almost 4 meters. So 35 cars were totally damaged because they still remained there. Others left already. That was a huge parking house, good for I don't know how many hundreds of cars. Yeah, but 35 totally damaged. I saw a Mercedes completely damaged. You can never use again. Huh? And then I saw a delivery, and the generators also all damaged, not working anymore. All the warehouses for the coffee shops not working anymore. And there was a whole delivery of about 20 pallets of carpet tiles. You know, these carpet tiles you put in the upper to the upper floors of the commercial center. That was a commercial center I'm talking about. All these, I don't remember very well, but I think it was 20 pallets or even more. They were only good for the waste disposal site. You cannot use anymore. So everything is for nothing. Losses. So in my case, and everything started with a small trickle of water. And in my case, my tiny little thing that drove me crazy, that was only my micro SD card that made it impossible to record my podcast episode with my recording gadget, my Rode Podcaster I'm always using. So there was not there were no worries. I used my phone and that's it. No consequences. Yeah. But when it comes to heavy rain, you talk about damages, losses, injuries, deaths. And that is a bad part. A tiny thing becomes big. And that is what we always should consider. And in the last episode, I talked about my struggle with this tiny thing. And today I told you, you can solve it in a good way. And the same is true for the flood protection. The only difference is that when it comes to heavy rain, you are really in danger. Not only all your investment is in danger, your life is in danger, and the life of your loved ones. When you are at home, it's your family, your friends. When you are in a company, it's your employees, are the customers. My golden nugget for you is that be alarmed when tiny little things arise. There is a reason for it, and don't neglect them. So the reason for in my case was every micro SD card can fail. I mentioned that it happened to my IT administrator and several other people as well, because he was asking around. And they all reported the same thing. So it can happen. So now you know, if you used a micro SD card, one day it might be that this micro SD card is not working anymore. So what is the lesson? The lesson is you make a backup all the time. If you save photos on it, addresses or whatever kind of data. And you perhaps already have a spare part, another micro SD card, that you can replace it. So then you are prepared and nothing will happen. I mean, your life goes on. You don't, there is not a consequence. The consequence only is that perhaps for several days you cannot use your phone properly anymore because you have no access to your data if you really need it. So don't neglect these things. But when it comes to water, a trickle of water, a little bit, then you should be alarmed. So don't neglect that. Take it seriously. Take action. Stay safe and flood free. I wish and hope for you that you make the right decisions when it comes to your personal flood protection. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast channel if you haven't already. Now it only remains for me to wish you a good day. Do something with it. Maybe until the next podcast episode. I would be very happy. See you then. As always, stay safe and flood free. Your Andreas Klippe and the whole Flood Experts team.
That's it again with the new episode of Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood Andreas Klippe, German engineer, book author, and head of the Flood Experts. Flood, Andreas Klippe protect for you. Anytime, worldwide. Contact us or just click through to www.thefloodexperts.de/bonus. Detailed engineering, German quality, safe. Flood protection secrets. The secrets you'll want to unfold.
Don't forget, you're only one flood barrier away.
Subscribe to the season, and you'll never be late for an episode.